Viewer discretion is advised.
So I was born and raised in Southern California. My parents were young parents. My mom was 16, my dad was 18. We were raised Catholic. My grandma would take me to church on Christmas and Easter, and that was about the only Jesus in church that I knew. My mom would end up leaving my dad when I was 14. It got too much, the alcoholism, the anger issues. She'd end up leaving my dad. And I was already just kind of already searching, already getting in a lot of trouble. I was already, hiding my dad's beers by the side of my bed when I was 12. I was already taking my mom's cigarettes and her cigarette buds and smoking those. I was already prone to just extremity. Like I was already born for something extreme. And so I was already getting involved in some of that. But when my parents divorced and my dad took off, I still remember it. I was at my friend's house and my mom came. They were in Vegas. And then my dad, just lost everything. So he took off, and at that moment, I just started looking for love in all the wrong places. Started partying really hard at 14, started having 3 different boyfriends at different schools so they wouldn't know each other, and just started going wild. From there, started doing every drug, started getting in every scene, started living with my boyfriend. He was a gang member, and started fighting in the school, so I'd get transferred to an adult ed or another school. And in that, would meet my boyfriend that I would then go and live with, and he was involved in the gang, so we just I got involved with gangs and different things like that. And then at one point, we were just make up to break up, teenage love, and just selling drugs out of the house, and just a mess. And I remember at one point, I couldn't live with him or without him. I had this huge hole in my heart. And I remember crying out to God. My grandma had given me this little journal with angels on it. And I remember writing a note to God and just saying, if you're real, how could you even be real? Because if you're such a good God, why would I be born into this life of hell? I really don't, because I was taught as a little girl, if something happened, if you commit suicide, you'll go to hell. And so I said, I really don't care if I go to hell because I feel like I'm living in hell right now. At that moment, it had gotten really low with living with my boyfriend, and I couldn't live with him, couldn't live without him. And at that moment, something over me broke. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, come and get me. I'm going to come home. And I remember my mom pulled up, filled all the trash bags with all of my stuff, and left. And from there, that I was finally free of that. But then I started dancing in the clubs of Hollywood. I was a go-go dancer in the clubs of Hollywood, and then for a famous radio station in Southern California called Power 106, the Baker Boys. So started dancing for all the opening for the Hollywood club premieres. All my girlfriends, they were all the dancers, they were either boyfriends with the bouncers or the bartenders or the club promoters. So we started getting in that world, and it was a really dark world. It was a world of you just use your body for power. You use your body to get whatever you want to get. And so we were there. We were about to go to this big Hollywood club premiere. At that time, I was doing a lot of drugs to stay up. I was doing a lot of cocaine, a lot of meth, and I had developed epilepsy. So I started having seizures, and they actually had to put the attachments to check me for epilepsy. And at that point, I had died almost about 6 times, sometimes from just not sleeping for multiple days. So when you're dancing all the time and you're up those hours from 10 to 3 in the morning, you're not really sleeping well. You're not sleeping right. You're sleeping a few hours, and then you go up and you're partying again. And so from them, I started having epilepsy. And what would happen was I would either be in a hotel room after the night, and I'd start having a seizure in front of everybody, or I'd go to be alone and I'd fall right there in the driveway and start having a seizure. So they'd freak out and call the ambulance, and I'd wake up in hospitals. And I just remember remember like waking up and doctors over me just crying, literally saying, little girl, I don't know what is going on. I don't know what there is about you, but there's something very special about you. Like, can you please stop doing what you're doing? And I didn't know how to stop doing what I was doing. And a couple other times, because I was just so out of it, I'd get in car accidents, like major, I should have been dead car accidents. There's one time where my mom said I'd come back from Mexico. We started also dancing in Ensenada, Rosarito, because it was over the border from California. So we'd go in there and dance at Papas and Beer and different things. And there was one time that we got back, and my mom said she heard all of a sudden, she would never sleep well in those days because she'd wait for me to come home because she'd want to see if I'd have a seizure or not. And that she had heard me go forward and literally thud my head on the sink. And then she heard me fall back, and she'd heard me choking on my own tongue. And so they're trying to get in the door, and they couldn't get in the door. I was hedged up by the door. I was blocking the door, so she couldn't get in. They had to take the door off the hinges. And my mom said, I had to resuscitate you naked. And I woke up, and I just remember my mom crying over me. She said, Lana, you were blue. You stopped breathing. And so it just got to that kind of rock bottom part. I know another time, we were in Rosarito Beach, and we were, partying and dancing, and we went to a motel after. And so there was a motel, and everyone was packed in this tiny motel in Mexico. And my friend she said, all of a sudden I started having a seizure, and that somebody came up and said, put a spoon in her mouth to hold down her tongue so that she doesn't swallow her tongue, or she'll choke on her tongue and she'll die. And so they didn't know. So somebody got a spoon and went to put it to my mouth. And my friend said at that moment that all of a sudden this big guy came from out of nowhere. And she said, Lana, we would have known like if we saw this big guy, but we didn't see him. It was a small motel, but he came out of nowhere. And he said, put her on her side and she'll come out of it. And he put me on my side, and he started rubbing my back, and I stopped having a seizure. So this started getting marked, where I was having these near-death experiences where I was, I wouldn't take the medicine. I started having car accidents, all of these things where my life was just on a full-blown destruction path. And I remember being at my friend's house, and we were getting high, and I started doing drugs that would calm me so that I wouldn't have seizures. And so we were getting high, and in that moment, I remember hearing a voice, and that voice said, you've tried everything. You've tried everything. Nothing's satisfying you. You're not happy. Nothing's fulfilling you. Why don't you just kill yourself? And it was crazy because my personality I was normally like a happy-go-lucky, life of the party, just like my dad. Like I wasn't this depressed kind of person, but I started, this thought just came, and this voice spoke that to me. So I started thinking, I have tried everything. I've tried every drug, I've tried everything, and nothing is satisfying me. Nothing's making me happy. And so I'm getting ready to dance. I'm getting ready to go to this big Hollywood club premiere. And I go to my friend's house, and she lived a little bit down the street from my aunt. And what had happened is my aunt had become a Christian prior to that. Growing up, I had not known one Christian. I hadn't been raised in church. In school, I didn't know what Christianity was. All I knew was that, Jesus was on a cross on the wall, and we go to church on Christmas and Easter, and that's all I knew. And we asked for forgiveness, of what we've done. So my aunt becomes a Christian. She stops cussing. She stops drinking at the Mexican family barbecues. We think she's a cult. We think she's weird. This is an aunt that I did lines of coke with at my graduation party. And so I'm like, Aunt Dory, what happened to you? And she was young as well. They were all young. So she was more like an older sister. I said, what happened to you? And so we all knew, and we thought, okay, stay away from Aunt Dory. Well, that was 3 months prior. So I hadn't talked to Aunt Dory. I was down the street, and all of a sudden a voice spoke to my heart and said, pick up the phone and call your Aunt Dory. And I didn't know what that voice was, but I walked over to the phone, I picked it up, and I called my Aunt Dory. And I said, Aunt Dory, can I come over and you dye my hair? And she was like, sure, honey, come over. And so I'm getting ready to tell my friend, hey, I know we have this big Hollywood club premiere, but I'm going to go up to my Aunt Dory's house. I'll be right back. And I said, Lana, this is a big deal. Don't be late. And I said, no. Don't worry. I'll be right back. Everything's going to be fine. So I go over to my aunt's house. all of a sudden they're walking out. I said, where are you going? It's a Friday night. Where are you going? And they said, we're going to church. I said, on a Friday night? They said, yes. And I said, I thought only old people went to church on a Friday night. Well, and I said, okay. And they said, do you want to go? And I said, sure, I'll go. I didn't think anything of it. And they said, well, why don't you come in and we have to change your clothes because you can't go dressed like that. I was dressed to go dance at a Hollywood club premiere. So they said, you can't go dressed like that. So I went in, got cleaned up, and changed my clothes. And I remember walking into this church, and it was in a club district that I actually used to dance at called Old Town Pasadena. And so it was at this club district, and I walked in, and everybody was young, and everybody looked like me. And I remember looking around, and I was 19 at this point. I remember looking around, and I just saw, and I thought, what is going on? I thought only old people went to church on a Friday night. Why are these people here? I saw people crying, and I saw people lifting their hand, and I'd never seen anything like that in my life. But I couldn't deny what I felt. I felt warm. I felt peace. And I'd been tormented. I'd been having seizures. I've been doing so many drugs. I'd been seeing darkness. I saw a girl raped, just months before that, right in front of me in my house, actually. I saw another girl die in Mexico. They were popping wheelies with the motorcycles, and she fell off the motorcycle and cracked her head open. It started getting really, really dark. And that scene, though it looked really attractive and fun, it started getting really dark really fast. Friends of mine started getting raped. Different things started happening. And so I felt this feeling that I hadn't felt in a long time. And so it just made me really curious. I had never seen it, but I wasn't scared. It actually made me curious for what is this? What is going on here? So I remember sitting down, and the preacher came out, and he was young and he was cute. And I thought that preachers were old and bald. And so I thought, I am so confused at what's happening right now. But he came out, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, you've been trying to fill that hole in your heart with drugs, with alcohol, with relationships, with men. Don't you know that you can never fill that with anything that you look for? What you've been looking for your whole night, he is here tonight. His name is Jesus. He's standing at the door of your heart knocking. And if you open it up and let him in, you'll never thirst again. You'll never search again. You'll never look again. What you've been looking for your whole life, he is here tonight. And if you call on him, you'll never search anymore. And at that moment, it was crazy, but I saw this open scene in the air. And now I know it was an open vision. I didn't know what it was, but it was like an old Hollywood film reel, like an old Hollywood film. And everywhere in that scene, it was my life. It's what I did. It was really me, and it really happened. And the first one was going to college, and me, that not satisfying. Working with my parents, the career girl, that not satisfying. Living with my boyfriend, that not satisfying. Every single drug that I tried, that not satisfying. The alcoholism, that not satisfying. The partying, that not satisfying. The go-go dancing, that not satisfying. Every single one. And it was me, and I just saw it flash by my life. And the last scene was blank. And I heard that same voice that said, pick up the phone and call your aunt, speak to me and say, the decision you make right now will change your life forever. And at that same moment, that preacher said, if you want to come, you can come up. And at that same time, my 14-year-old cousin that came with me went to ask me to go up, and she said I had already ran up to that altar by myself. And I remember praying this prayer. Nobody told me to pray this. He didn't say, pray after me. Nobody said this. I just remember doing this by myself, out of my heart, out of my life. I remember putting my hands out like this and just saying, God, at 19 years old, I've made a mess of my life. I'm in a million pieces. My heart, my mind, my body, it's all in a million pieces. But if you can do anything with these million pieces, I give them to you. And I just pushed forward the million pieces. You have to remember, I was having epilepsy, I was having seizures, I was using my body, my mind was a mess from the drugs, everything was a mess. And I remember just pushing it forward to God and saying, if you could do anything, I give you these million pieces. And at that moment, it was like warm honey from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. Wherever that honey touched, it cleansed, it purified, it healed. I felt whole. I felt like like sin had never touched me and I had never touched anything dirty. I didn't know what that felt like since I was a little girl. I forgot what that pureness and what that wholeness had felt like since I was a little girl. And it cleaned, and I felt clean again. And I say it like this: all of a sudden, like the sky was blue and the grass was green. I didn't realize that I'd been seeing in black and white, but I could see in color again. And the first scripture I ever read was, if anyone that's in Christ, they're a new creation. Old things pass away. Behold, all things become new. And I said, that's what happened to me. That's what happened to me. And everything old had passed away. And I called my friends and I said, I met the man of my dreams and I'm never coming back. His name is Jesus. And they said, we don't know how you went from bar girl to Mother Teresa in 0.2 seconds, but you were the worst of us. And if Jesus can save you, there's hope for every single one of us. And one by one, all of those go dancer friends started going to church with me. That gang member boyfriend that I lived with, he actually came to church with me and gave his life to this same Jesus. And now he's a children's pastor in our home church. And I remember at that altar, I say it like this: I made 2 personal vendettas to God. One, I would tell as many people about Jesus because nobody ever told me. Nobody ever gave me a chance. Nobody ever said, you don't have to live this life you're living. You're on a fast track to destruction. Let me tell you about a man that can save you. Let me tell you about someone. You don't have to live this kind of life. Nobody ever told me. So I made a personal vendetta that with my life from here on out, that I would tell as many people about Jesus and what he did for me. And 2, that I would protect and fight for vulnerable and innocent children. Because what had happened to me as a child, and I really believe that that's what opened the door for all of the destruction in my life. And that's what opened the door for all just the hole in my heart and the looking for love in all the wrong places was we were left, my parents worked from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we were often left at the babysitters. And I would get sexually abused at that babysitter over and over again from first grade on to when we moved till 4th grade. And I believe that opened a door into my life for all of these things to happen, for all of this destruction, for the shame, for the dirtiness as a child, to deal with these things that I never had to deal. That took my childhood at a very young age and made me grow up at a very young age. So number 2, I would protect and fight for vulnerable and innocent children and give them their childhood back because of what happened to me as a child. So I went out and I was instantly delivered from drugs. I was instantly healed from epilepsy. I haven't had a seizure since I was 19 years old. I haven't touched a drug since I was 19 years old. I'm now 48 years old. God did a full work. He healed my heart. I say I'm a born-again virgin. Everything was made new. And I knew, and at that altar, there was a great exchange. His life for my life for his life. I knew that my life was bought at a price. I knew that I would never be the same again, that now I had a second chance to do it right. I knew that in my hands, my life, I would have ended up trafficked. I would have ended up raped. I would have ended up dead. I remember at one point, later on, I would already be, a Christian for about 5 years, and I'd be living my destiny for about 5 years. And all of a sudden, I start seeing flashbacks of something that really happened to me. And I remember it and it really happened. It was really there. And I started seeing flashbacks of this motel, and it was a crack house, actually. Later, I would find out. And I was there, and everything evil was happening there. There's some other girls there, some other guys there. And I remember there was just lines of cocaine, and there was a big mirror. And it really actually happened. I really was there. My friends were actually there, and everything was going on all around me. And so I had this flashback of what I was really doing, 5 years prior. And I remember having my face down, doing lines of coke, and looking up in the mirror. And all of a sudden, I looked up, and I saw Jesus standing behind me. And I said, Jesus, please go. You don't belong here. This place is dirty. This place is dirty. Jesus, you don't belong here. I don't want you to see this. I don't want you to see me. Please go. Please go. You don't belong here. You're too clean for this. And Jesus put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, I was here all along. I was always here. I was making sure that you didn't OD and that they didn't rape you. I was here this whole time. I knew everything about you, and I still chose you, and I still called you. And so that would happen later on, where he knew everything about me, and he still called me, and he still chose me. So go back to at that altar, that great exchange. I knew his life for my life for his life. And from that day forward, I promised God that I would never live another day of my life for the devil, that every day from here on out, because it was my second chance, I would live all my days for God, and never one day again would I live for my own demise, for my own wanting, for what I wanted, for my own will, but it would be whatever God wanted. And I say it like this: I was rescued to rescue. I knew that God rescued me so that I could rescue others. I knew that at that moment I was rescued to rescue and to never go back.
Lana, how long have you been walking faithfully with the Lord Jesus Christ now?
29 years, for 29 years.
And you've been, we've known of you through some of the incredible work that you've been doing overseas with that calling or that desire that you had when you gave your life to Jesus, which is to protect those children. Tell us about what happened after that moment of surrendering your life to the Lord, and what these last years have looked like, these couple of decades.
Yeah. So at that altar, rescue to rescue, I knew that it was those two things, that that's what I was going to do with my life. That one, I was going to tell as many people about Jesus before the age 19, because nobody ever told me. And two, that I'd fight for and protect innocent children. So I knew that in my heart, and I knew I wanted to tell as many people. So thankfully, that church that I got saved at, it was called Victory Outreach, and it was an outreach in the club districts of Hollywood. So the next week, they brought us to those lines where of the clubs, telling our testimony of what God had done. And I remember being in that line saying, I used to be a dancer in this club, and God saved me. He delivered me. He healed me. I'm delivered from drugs, from alcohol. I haven't been able, since I was young, haven't been able to get free from any of this. And telling people one by one, even the next week in those same clubs that I was a dancer at. And I just remembered that I couldn't get everything fast enough. I couldn't get the things of God fast enough. So I would read the Bible like all the time, and it was like a treasure chest. Like, oh my gosh, it says I can do this. It says I can be this. This is like the full package deal of what's happened for me. And I remember just going to church every time the doors were open, and just trying to get more and more of God, and understanding this new life and who I was now and what this new life was. And it was like a wonderland for me now. It was like Disneyland for me. It was a whole new world for me. I didn't know that I could be whole like this. I didn't know that I didn't need like a man and a boyfriend and this and this and this, that he was enough. I didn't know that he would fill every nook and cranny and crevice of my heart, that he'd heal me from that he'd heal me from my trauma, that he'd heal me for everything. So all of this was just a new life, and walking with this and experiencing healing and experiencing just a filled joy and an overflowing life again. And it was, so I'd go to church, and I remember at one point I started this thing called, giving. Every time, they asked for the offering or they asked for giving. And I remember just writing checks of everything I had, because he gave me everything he had. And people would say, oh, it's just 10%. You just give the church 10%. And I remember writing a check and saying, he saved my life. How can I not give him everything? And I just remember wanting to give everything, because he saved my life. I knew I would be dead or raped or end up on the street or hooked on some kind of drug. And so I just remember surrender coming easy, because I knew the reality of I wouldn't have life if it wasn't for him. And now I said, okay, this new life that I have, I want to live every day for you. I live for the devil. I live for myself. And so surrender just came like that every day. And so what that looked like was not getting enough of God, not getting what I needed fast enough. I wanted more and more and more. So God did a quick work. Within 3 months, I was a Sunday school teacher. Within 6 months, I was a youth leader. And so I remember not even knowing the Bible. So I would get the children's books and I would read it, and then I would go and teach it in the Sunday school classroom. And so I would learn it along with the kids. And I remember for the youth, I would throw them all in my car and pack out my car and bring them to our youth group. And all these young kids were getting their lives changed too. So it was just this huge thing that was happening, this huge movement because of my life. One by one, all the dancers, all of my friends, they started getting saved. My family, that alcoholic father, abusive father, he ends up giving his life to the Lord. My mom gives their life to the Lord. Like my whole family, because they see the transformation, they knew, like they pulled me out of hospital beds. They pulled me out of, almost dying. So they knew. And actually my mom told my brother, you know what happened. You've seen her almost die. You saw her and you see her now. We can't deny it. And from that, my family starts getting saved. They start going to the church that I go to. To this day, they go to the church that I go to. So in that, God just did a really quick work. And I carried those two things in my heart. I just did as much as I could when I could with going and street witnessing. I remember we'd get the youth and we'd go to the bowling alley and we'd tell people about what Jesus had done for us. And we were just so excited about this new life and the second chance that God had given us. And so in that, what happened was I started looking to go to Bible school. I was like, okay, I don't know anything about this. And some people had been to Bible school. I just remember seeing them. And I remember being in this church and just saying, God, if I'm going to do this Christianity thing, my life in the world was fun. It was adventurous. Yeah, it got dark in the end, but we had fun. It was adventurous. If I'm going to do this Christianity thing, I want it to be fun. I don't want it to be boring. And I remember just seeing these preachers that would come and I could tell they knew God. I can see the power. I could see, I saw miracles happen. And I remember saying, I want to do it like that. If I'm going to do this Christianity thing, I want what they got. I want to do it the way they're doing it. They know you. I'm seeing miracles. I'm seeing healing. I was healed. I'm seeing all these things happen. I want to do it like that, not like this person that's just in the church for 10 years and, still, struggling with the same thing. And I don't want that. I want that, whatever that is. And so I started realizing those people went to this Bible school. So they started teaching us. And again, it was just like a treasure chest. I started learning more and more. And I think, okay, I think I should go to this Bible school. And I remember getting a leaflet and it says, if you want to reach more people, if you want to transform more lives the way your life was transformed. So I said, that's what I want to do. Sign me up. So I fill out this application to go to this Bible school. And in all of this, I remember it saying, how are you going to pay for it? Well, I didn't know how I was going to pay for it at that time. And my parents, I remember calling them. And at this time yet, they hadn't believed the same, and they thought I was crazy. They thought I was a wacko. They didn't know anything. And I said, I want to go to this Bible school. Will you pay for it? And they said, no, if you're not going to get a degree, we'll pay for everything if you get a good degree. But if you're just getting a certificate, I'm not paying for you to go to this Bible school. So I said, all right, whatever. So I just left it on the table, and it was, how are you going to pay for it? It was blank. And I remember one day I was driving to the church, and when I was driving to the church, God said, pull over, go to your dad's house and tell him you're going to basically go to this Bible school. I'm going to pay for it. And from that, your dad's going to come to know me. So I remember just throwing open the door. My dad's watching the Dodger game. He's on his bed. I said, Dad, God told me that I'm going to go to Bible school, that God's going to pay for it, that you're not going to send me to do God's will. And that from that, you're going to know that he's real. And so he's like, whatever, you're a whack job. Okay. And then I said, did the same thing to my mom. I remember going, Mom, God told me that he's going to send me to Bible school. He's going to pay for it. And that from that, you're going to see and you're going to know that he's real and you're going to come to believe in him. And she said, same thing, whatever, you're crazy. You need to stop this. This church has got you crazy. So I remember doing that, just driving, and all of a sudden my head, like, what did I do? That was my only way of money. That was my only way to go to Bible. What did I do? So I remember driving. I ran to the church, sat in that front row. All of a sudden, the preacher came over to me and he said, you have Bible school written across your forehead. And he said, the God saying to you, don't be afraid, only believe. He's going to send you. And I just start crying because nobody else knew. And I just had that application in front of me. I start crying. All of a sudden, like I can't even hear the rest of the church service. I'm wrecked. Everyone's looking at me. I'm a mess. All of a sudden, after we go back, I go up to his wife, and she said, I'm saying, thank you. Nobody knew, but I have this application. And she said, is what my husband said true? Are you planning to go to Bible school? What, anything like that? And I said, yes, I am. Actually, I have an application on my desk, and I just don't know how I'm going to pay for it. And she said, actually, what Bible school is it? And I said, it's this Bible school. And she said, we are graduates from that Bible school. God sent us here, and he said that we're going to send 2 people. And she said, pack your bags. We already have that tuition saved. We're going to pay your tuition, pack your bags. You're going to go to that Bible school in 3 months. The first semester starts. So I packed my bags and pulling out. When I pull out, I knew I was supposed to go. When I pulled out by faith in that mailbox, I got my acceptance to that Bible school. That's how much I knew that I was supposed to go. The acceptance letter came when I was already pulling out. So just by a divine appointment of things, I had the job, I had the apartment, I had everything lined up. I go there, I start hearing about this different country called Thailand. I start hearing about children trafficked. I start hearing about how an 8-year-old's virginity can go for as much as $3,000. I start hearing how this red light district in Bangkok, Thailand, that they house children. It's the largest amount of children that are forced into prostitution and that they're trafficked down to here for a pool for child trafficking, children forced into prostitution, child exploitation. How businessmen will come here because they believe that if they sleep with a child, that they can basically have good luck for their business. How they believe if children if they have HIV and they sleep with a child, there's a myth that children will take away the HIV, and that they look for children, they look for the younger, the better. So I start hearing about this. I'm only 22. At the same time, I say it like this. I already knew at that altar I was rescued to rescue. I already knew that I was supposed to do something with protecting vulnerable children, at-risk children, innocent children. I already knew all about this. So I knew, okay, this is something that I need to do. I knew these missionaries, and they said, we've been to Cambodia, we've been to Thailand, we've heard what has happened. We're coming up with a strategy: prevent, rescue, heal. So I said, sign me up. I'm going to help. Whatever you do, I know I'm supposed to help that. So all of these puzzle pieces start coming together. I also, during that time, start hearing about basically the kids in Brazil, how 300,000 street kids in the streets of Brazil, that the police are paid off by the store owners, that they'll come and they'll massacre them and they'll dump their bodies, and that you'll smell the bodies of rotting children in the open sewages of Sao Paulo, Brazil. I knew that, and I knew I need to do something about that, even at 22. At the same time, I hear about I say it like this: I got pieces to the puzzle. That first piece was at-risk and exploited children, rescue to rescue. The second piece was Thailand. The third piece was Brazil. And the next piece was God gave me a scripture, Psalms 127, verses 3-5. As arrows in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. They will not be ashamed, but they will subdue and conquer the enemy at the gate. I knew that God was telling me that in the Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu nations of the world, there are generations that don't know me. You'll raise up a generation to know me, and that generation will make me known to their own nation, and they'll stop the evils against children in their own nations. So he started showing me a picture of children's homes, and I remember saying, but God, I'm an evangelist. I want to win hundreds, thousands, millions to you. I don't want to have a daddy daycare. I don't want to have a God daycare and have these 10 little children and me like Mary Poppins holding these children's hands, float up to heaven singing Kumbaya, my Lord. I want to just reach as many for you in my generation, in my lifetime. He said, you'll reach more through these children than you'll ever reach alone. So I knew that we were supposed to do children's homes, but not in a way of just the normal traditional orphanages, but that I'd raise up an army of children, that in the last days that these children, they'd reach their own nation. They'd be the one to stop the evils in their own nation. And I knew that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to raise up a generation to know him and to make him known in their own nation, that we were going to reach, rescue, and raise up a generation. And so I had all of this. When I was 22 years old, I'd never been on a missions trip. I didn't know what missionaries were. I'd never been outside America besides Mexico. I'd never been to anywhere like this. So I didn't know what any of this is. But God started giving me the picture in my heart. God started giving me the blueprint in my heart. I started seeing in my heart what to do. So when these missionaries came and said, we're going to start these homes, first one's going to be Thailand, second one's going to be Mexico, third one was like India, I think the fourth one was Africa, fifth one was Brazil. I said, I will commit 2 months to you to every single one of these nations. But when I get to Brazil, I'll stop there. I will, I'll live there. That's what I'm going to work with the street kids in Brazil. So my plan was just to help start this home, in Thailand. And we came up with a motto saying, we've heard their cries, he's answered their prayers, we've planned their escape. And so it was our strategy, it was our motto: prevent, rescue, heal. We're going to go and we're going to prevent. We're going to get to these areas and these children. We're going to go to the pools of where the traffickers get these children and get them before the bad guys get them. We're going to rescue them out of, and then we're going to heal their little bodies and their little minds. So I promised 2 months. We started with a prevention home with at-risk children. There was 52 kids. I helped them just pioneer the home, decorate the home, help with the kids. And I was supposed to leave after 2 months. Well, the girl that was supposed to run it, I was 24 years old. The girl that was supposed to run it said, there's no way I can do this alone. You need to stay. So they asked me, would you be the director of the home? Would you stay? And I said, okay, but I'm supposed to go to Brazil. I'll give you some more months. So 2 months turned into 6 months. And I was the director of the home. A 14-year-old girl came up to me, the first face I ever saw when I went to Thailand. And she said, I don't have a mom. You don't have a daughter. From this day forth, you're my mom and I'm your daughter. And after that, I couldn't leave these kids. So 2 months turned into 6 months. 6 months turned into a year and a half. A year and a half into it, the missionaries contacted me and said, children's homes are expensive. We do church planning and we do Bible school planning. We'd never meant to do long-term children's homes. We only pioneer them. They're sucking our general funds. We're going to close down the homes. And I said, you can't do this. These 52 kids, we're the only family they know. We can't do this to them. We can't close the homes. And they said, well, that's what's going to happen. We know some other people. We're going to probably give the homes over to them. I was 25 and a half. And I said, would you pray about giving the homes over to me? I had $500 in my hand. There was 3 other single missionary girls. And they said, Lana, if you took over the homes, we'll help you. We'll all put our money together and we'll take care together. We'll help fund the homes. It was $2,000 for a boys' home and a girls' home. And they said, we'll pull all our money together. If you take over the home, we'll help you. And so I said, would you hand the homes over to me? So at 24 years old, I became mama to 52 children in a prevention home. At 25 and a half, I became the owner of an international organization. And so we started that home. So we did the prevention side of things. Then it naturally turned into, okay, God, we know we're supposed to rescue. We know that that's coming. We know that that's up down the road. And we just stayed faithful with these 52 kids. We started raising them up. I had them going into the markets. They were telling about what they were rescued from. They were giving their testimony. These kids, they were the ones that were the arrows in God's hand. They were the ones that they're sharing their testimony, sharing what Jesus had done for them. They started having dreams and visions. They started getting healed in their little bodies. And so this started happening. And I thought, okay, we're good. I was doing this for 6 years. All of a sudden, God started reminding me of rescue. He started reminding me of, okay, it wasn't just prevention, it was now rescue. We started going up and looking up, and there was this border town where we heard 60 women and children were trafficked daily down to the red light district of Bangkok. I heard this, and I knew already that was what we were supposed to do. I started asking around, is there any home? And they said, no, everyone's scared. Nobody will do anything about it. Everyone is in on it. The police are in on it. The border control's in on it. Everyone's in on it. Nobody will do anything. So I'm looking around, and I knew that this area was a hot spot. I knew it was one of the ways that feeded the red light district of Bangkok. So started looking around, started asking around, had friends. I was already doing work in a neighboring country called Burma, Myanmar, in the war zone. I had freedom fighter friends, and I started asking them, hey, will you take me in a brothel? Will you get me in a brothel? Will you take me? I'm supposed to do something on this border. I want to see what's really going on. They said, yes, we'll take you. It was an afternoon. All of a sudden, I start calling him, and he's not picking up my phone. And so I said, oh, what's going on? All right, I'm going to go to lunch. And we're looking around, starting to look what's going on. My kids at this point were older. They're going to college in my prevention home. So I was more free to look into, okay, what rescue? How do we pick that up? What's going on? And when we were there, we said, okay, take a lunch break, figure out what's happening. We're supposed to get into these brothels. We take a lunch break. All of a sudden, an 8-year-old girl comes up to me begging, barefooted, open wounds, pus coming out of it. She starts begging. She says, 10 baht, which is 30 cents. And I said, I said, I'm not going to give you money, but I'll give you food. And she said, come with me. I heard a voice say, come with her, and go with her. Sorry. I heard a voice say, go with her. And so I said, okay, get in my truck, in the back of my truck. All of a sudden, she starts calling her street kid friends. They get in the back of the truck, and we have a little street kid parade around the town. We pull up to her house. I lived in Thailand as a missionary already at that point, 7 years. And so at that moment, like I had never seen anything like that. It was blown out. Now I know it was a Muslim community, Muslim slum that had a trafficking pool where they sold their children into the begging rings down in Bangkok, then that would graduate into the sex tourism rings. And so in that, I didn't know. I'd never seen it before. I'd never been in that area. She took me to a squatter house. There was animals living underneath. There was a hole on the second floor. Later, one of the babies would fall through that hole, almost die. All the walls around it were blown out, and there was rice sacks hanging in place of walls. And so anyway, she says, come with me. And I'm just keep hearing, follow her, go with her. So we go up to the second floor. The 8-year-old girl sits on my lap, and she looks at me and says, teacher, please don't let me go with them. Teacher, please don't let me go with them. Teacher, please let me go with you. Let me go with you. She's saying this to me in Thai. All of a sudden, the mom points to her and says, she's going down to Bangkok in an hour and a half. And I said, why is she going to Bangkok? No. And she said, oh, no money, no money. She has a 12-year-old sister down there already. She's going to sell flowers with her 12-year-old sister. And I said, please, no. I know she's not going to sell flowers. Don't let her go. And she goes, no money, no money. And so she starts talking to me. I start negotiating with her. Hey, how about I put her in school? Hey, how about I bring your family rice? If it's you guys aren't eating, I'll help get your family back on their feet. Just don't send her to Bangkok. How about I help your family? Let me do that. Let me give her tuition. Let me put her in school. I'll take her to school right now, get her enrolled. I know the teachers in this area. Please. I already, was already working in that area. Please let me help you in some way. She said, no money, no money. And she said, I already borrowed that money from the traffickers. So if they come and they don't have a little girl for their money, we will die. We will all die. And I said, how much was it? And she said, it was an equivalent of $18. It was 600 baht. And so I said, okay. And I said, and what else? And she said, and I actually owe them interest, and I gambled and I owe them more. So it's an equivalent of $24. And so finally I tried everything possible. I said, what if I pay back that money to the traffickers and you send her with me? And she thought for 1 second and she said, if you do it, you need to do it now because they are coming and they will kill us all. And so at that moment, I gave her the $24 in Thai baht and I said, here you go. She said, take her now. I threw her in my truck. I did not realize that whole time it was an hour and a half of negotiations. In that whole time, I threw her in the truck. Thank God my windows were tinted. This time I put her inside my truck. We were pulling out and the traffickers were pulling up at just the same time. The little girl said, those are the ones that were taking me to go down to Bangkok. Those are the ones that were taking me to go down to Bangkok. At that time, we drove by. I don't know anything about this little girl. I barely know her name. I don't know how old she is. I don't know. I don't have her birth certificate. I don't know anything about her. We drove by a very big name children's organization on that border, and they work in different areas. And we drove by and she goes, I went to school there. So I pull over and I say to the people there, I said, I got out. And I said, do any of you know this little girl? And they looked at me and they said, how did you get her? Yes, we know her. How did you get her? And he said that she was supposed to be trafficked. I said, why didn't you do anything? If you knew she was supposed to be trafficked, why didn't you do anything? And they said, we can't do anything. Everybody's scared. The police are involved. The police own all the brothels on this border. The border control's involved. Everybody's involved. Nobody will do anything. Everybody's scared. And so they said, we can't do anything. There's nothing to do. We can't do anything. She said, there's 12 more children just like this little girl that will be trafficked this week that we know about. And I heard that same voice in my heart say, you do something. You do something about it. And so I said, what if I do something? And they said, if you do something, we'll get you those 12 children that would have been trafficked. I said, get me those children. I'm going to find a home. We're gonna get those children. So in a supernatural chain of events, my rescue children that were now college age, they came with me. They found a home. We got a home. I told this children's organization, we got a home. And so, give me those children. We started with 12 children. Well, we started rescuing left and right after that. We started rescuing. There's a border, on my border, there's an area called No Man's Land, and it's owned by the traffickers. It's owned by the mafia. There's one way in, there's one way out. You could get a child any age. You could get any drug you want. Everything illegal happens and evil happens there. And so basically everything's owned by the traffickers and the mama sans. Mama sans are owners of the brothels. They're like big grandmas or big mamas, we call them. And so that's where they were housing the children. So we did some really big rescues. I did some really big rescues myself in that area. And so we got up to 60 rescued children. Well, we were doing this all literally at this time. We were just taking them from the traffickers in that. And so the government heard about what we were doing. They set up a secret meeting with us. They said, we want to meet with you. I thought I was in trouble. I had 60 children in this 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. And so I thought, okay, I'm obviously not doing this the right way. I'm going to get in trouble. They set up a secret meeting with me and they said, we heard what you're doing. Will you do what you're doing for the kingdom of Thailand? And they said, what do you want from us? And in my heart, I heard, don't ask for money. And they said, do you want money? And I said, no. And they said, what would you want? I said, we want the authority, same as police, so that we don't have to bother you. And we can go ahead and rescue children that we hear of without having to put a burden on you. 2, we want citizenship for all of our children so that they can be productive members of society. I said those 2 things and they said, done. We became the first government-recognized safe home on the Thai-Burma border. And by law and decree of the Kingdom of Thailand, every single rescue child needs to come through our doors. And to this day, every single rescue child comes through our doors. From that one 8-year-old girl that we got for $24, turned into 12 children turned into 60 children. Now we have 158 children currently right now, but hundreds of children have come through our doors, through our Life Impact doors, through our rescue home, and through our HEAL facilities now. And so from that, the government now, we are on the multidisciplinary task force where basically there's 5 seats. It's the chief of police, it's the border control, it's the head of social welfare, and it is a child protection officer and a social worker. The social worker is one of my girls from my very first home, and the child protection officer, it's her husband, and it's one of my sons from one of my homes as well that's now on staff. So now we are on the multidisciplinary task force. We're able to be a voice for the voiceless. We're able to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. And so I say it like this: I was rescued to rescue. He rescued me to rescue others. He rescued me to rescue children from that. And now the rescued are becoming the rescuers, and we're teaching them that they are rescued to rescue and introduce them to their rescuer, Jesus Christ.
Lana, I want to pull back the curtain here a little bit.
Yeah.
In recent time, we've seen a major movie go viral.
Yeah.
Dealing with sex trafficking, a Christian film, and everything that you're saying, I mean, it's amazing. And I'm wondering, from a human perspective, man, you're dealing with people who kill people. You're dealing with people who are doing some atrocities.
Yeah.
Not trying to produce any fear, but I'm just really curious about the human aspect of, man, did you come across fear at any time, and like the dangers of what you're doing? Because the rescuing is amazing, and that's the goal, and that's awesome. But what was that process like, even for you to trust God with you're literally trusting God with your life, because it can be taken away any moment. What was that dynamic like between you and the Lord?
Yeah. So, I believe I was rescued to rescue. I believe that I was created to do what I'm doing, actually. And I could see God's hand on my life, and I could see God putting these different moments in my life to bring me to this moment to do what I'm doing. And there's one marker moment that I know that formed me and made me, and it's like, there's this passage in the Bible that says that when you're in your mother's womb, that I created you when you're in your mother's womb, and every day of your life is written in my book. And so I believe that God is preparing us for what's prepared what's already prepared for us to walk in. God created us for what we were created for. And so I can see marker moments in my life that God has used to make me right now, even though I didn't know him, he knew me. And there was one marker moment when I was 10 years old. So my dad is this big Mexican guy, and he has tattoos, and my brother's big Mexican guy. I got my little grandmother's genes. And so, but they're these big guys. And I remember very strong guys. And I remember walking, my dad's built half of downtown Los Angeles. So he used to take us there to see his buildings that he was building in the middle of the construction. And I remember vividly being about 11 years old. We were walking in down around Skid Row. There's a place called the Garment District, the LA Garment District. And my dad used to take us, and he'd give us money and say, okay, buy your Christmas presents there. And we'd buy a whole bunch in the LA Garment District. And so, because it was cheaper and you could get everything wholesale. So we were walking, but you have to walk through Skid Row. And we're walking through Skid Row. And I remember at this point we had to pass like under an underpass, and it was a tunnel and it was dark. And all of a sudden there was a man, and he just like rolled out of his tent and stared straight at me. And he had like bright red eyes, and you could tell if he could have, he would have hurt me. Like he just had evil in his eyes. And he just looked at me just with these eyes. And I remember that feeling of just fear for my life. And my dad was right there, and he grabbed my hand, and he just whispered in my ear, "Don't be afraid. Nobody's going to hurt you. I'm right here." And somehow, even though my dad didn't know the Lord, and even though we didn't know the Lord used that moment to instill a fearlessness on the inside of me that this whole time, that it's just like I can feel God's hand saying, "Don't be afraid. I'm right here. Nothing's going to harm you. Nobody's going to harm you." And it is this, honestly, it's not because I'm Superwoman. It's just that marked me. And that at that moment, as an 11-year-old girl, put a fearlessness on the inside of me. And I remember one moment, and there's just different moments that still just continue to mark me. But one moment, another moment before we started in Brazil, and Brazil is a different kind of level of danger. Thailand can be a little bit more passive. But Brazil is a lot more aggressive. And I remember telling them, "I want you to take me into the most dangerous favela where the most at-risk children are, where the children, nobody will go and help because of the danger, where the children have the most need." So they took us to one, and it's called the Red Command, which is actually controlled by the Colombian cartel. And so that's where they get all their drugs and all their guns and everything. And there's one way in and one way out in all of these places so they can control it. But driving in, there was a 16-year-old with a semi-automatic weapon. And I remember him just pointing it in the entrance. He just stands there all day long, stiff, bloodshot red eyes just from the drugs, and just standing there, just stiff as can be. And I remember us going and seeing that boy, and just my heart, I was like, that can be one of my boys. That's just somebody's boy. That's somebody's child. That's just a fatherless boy. And I just remember the compassion that comes on me that overwhelms the danger, like the love that just overwhelms and overshadows the danger. And so we were going in, and so we're in there, and they said, "Hey, the militia's here, and they're fighting with the drug traffickers, and so it's tense right now. They have a tank here, and so if we say run, you run. Like if we say run." I was like, "Okay, got it. Run." And I'm the only American. Everybody else is Brazilian, and they basically said, "Hey, they shoot first and don't ask any questions, because if you live here, you're either a drug trafficker, the girlfriend of the drug trafficker, the mother of the drug trafficker, or going to be a drug trafficker when you grow up. So you have no value here. And they think you're Brazilian because you look like us. So if we say run." And so I said, "Okay, done, run." So, and you have no time to whip out your passport and say, "Hey, I'm American, don't shoot," And so we're going around. I'm seeing little boys on bicycles with guns in their hands. Everywhere else, it's like, it looks like a fruit stand, but it's a drug stand. Everyone has guns. All these young guys have guns. So we're going around, and we're with this, he used to be a former drug trafficker, but he turned pastor. And so I'm with him, and he's walking. That's how we can get into these places. So he's walking, he's leading us. And all of a sudden he looks at me and says, well, I hear, "Pat, pat, 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 pat," and I hear guns. Well, I've been around guns, so I wasn't, I was familiar with it, and I smelt the gun smoke, but it was the closest I had ever smelt it before. And I went like this because I thought, was I shot? And it's just adrenaline and I can't feel it. And that's how close it sounded. And he looks at me, he goes, run. And so we start running up this hill. And I just remember him like running on side of me to protect me. And I just start laughing. Like I just start laughing, and he's running sideways because he's so skinny. So I'm like, that bullet is going to go straight through him to me. Like I should be protecting you instead of you protecting me. So I couldn't stop, but I just started laughing because I thought, this is funny. Like this skinny guy that's half of me is trying to protect me. And so I'm laughing because it's just funny. And we're running uphill. All of a sudden we hit the ground. And we just start praying. A different pastor, the main pastor that we came with, his phone rings and he just says, yes, yes. And then all of a sudden a hush fills the room and he goes, stop praying. And he goes, okay. And he looks at us, and I asked my interpreter, what is going on? And he said, that was the person that prays for the pastor all the time. And what happened was everything was happened so fast, the pastor didn't tell this lady to cover him in prayer, to pray for him. But all of a sudden, this lady perceived that the pastor was in danger. And she called and said, I perceive you're in danger, but there's somebody with you. And that person with you is so special. And so they're not finished with their assignment, and there's still more for them to do. And no harm is going to come to you because of that one person that's with you. We know and she said, I saw angels, but there's this one angel, and this one angel is assigned to that person that's with you. And that person has a very special assignment, and no harm, because of that person that's with you, no harm's going to come to you. And he looked at me and said, that person's you. And it was like, just a holy hush and a holy moment. And I can also just remember back all the times I was supposed to die, all the times, all the car accidents that came in that I I totaled the car, or there'd be no reason, or wake up alive, people just standing over me saying, there is something special. You were supposed to die. Like you could have died. And every time just God's hand just preserving my life. And I think in all of that, I've always felt that just the hand of God on my life and just the protection of my life. And I don't do these things flippantly. I do as the occasion demands, because nobody else will go to these places. Nobody else will rescue these children. Nobody else will. It's like what that organization said. Nobody else will do it. Everybody's scared. So I do it because these children need rescuing. But when I went back to the base and I was talking to my team, and they said, okay, we need to know why you were laughing. Because are you certified crazy? You need to tell us. Are you certified? Because that was not funny. Are you certified crazy? You are loca. Why were you laughing? And I told them, and they started laughing. They thought that part was funny. But I said, in the end of it, I just thought, that scripture that, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, and they didn't love their lives unto death. I said, you can die any way. I could die in a car accident, in a plane accident. I could have died in a wrong way before. I said, I could die anyway. How much more for me to die giving my life for the very people that Jesus himself gave his life for? And if I died, maybe nobody would come and get me in that favela because it's so dangerous. So maybe they would bury my bones, and people would know that somebody gave their life because somebody else gave his life for them. And from that, those people would come to know the love of Jesus, that maybe they're not valuable to the world or to human standards or to anybody else, but they're valuable to him. And that's how I really felt. Like I would love to be buried at a place that these people would know that there was one even greater that gave his life for these people. And I think that just revelation that they are worth it. If they were worth his life, then they're worth our life. And for them to hear about one who gave his life. So I think that added to it, and all the experiences of the God preserving my life for this time. And even those stories, the story about the angel in the motel, and that's how my friend actually came to the Lord and goes to church now. And she said, Lana, she said, I know that was an angel. She said, I know I was in there. That guy was not in the room. And she said, I believe because I know he is an angel, and I know that saved your life. And all of those moments, the moment in the motel, all of them has just given me this fearlessness, that I know I'm supposed to do what I'm doing. And just in those moments, another moment with a drug trafficker, actually, we got a crack house in Rio de Janeiro in one of the most dangerous favelas in Latin America, and we turned it into a children's prevention center. We see 350 children weekly there in that one prevention center. But my girl had to negotiate with number one and number two for this crack house, and they gave it to us and kicked out all the crack addicts from it and gave it to us for the children. But they sent on opening day, we had about 900 people from the community, drug dealers, everyone, mothers, everyone was there, children, everyone was there. Well, they sent number three there to survey to see, and he was videoing, sending it up to number one and number two, and basically talked to my girl who was responsible for it. She said, hey, he wants to meet with you. He was asking, who's the woman that's responsible for all of this? And so she said, he wants to meet with you. So it was loud, so they took me into another room, and I thought, man, he can do anything he wants. This is his jurisdiction. They rule that. And so we go into this room, and he starts talking to me, and all of a sudden I hear my heart pray for him. So I ask him, can I put my hand on your shoulder and pray for you? And he said, yes. And so I put my hand on his shoulder, and I said, I don't mean to interrupt you, but he said, yes, really seriously. And so I start praying for him. And I remember just God gave me these words, and I said, God, I thank you for your one and only son, Jesus, and the blood that he shed for all of our sins and everything that we've done wrong is more powerful. That sinless blood is more powerful, and it'll wash away all the blood that we have on our hands. It'll wash clean our blood-stained hands from any evil that we've done with these hands. And I'm praying for him, and all of a sudden he starts to shake. And so I said, and whoever calls on the name Jesus shall be saved. So we call on your name, Jesus. And I opened my eyes, and he opened his eyes, and I didn't know if he was going to kill me. I didn't know what was going to happen, but all of a sudden his eyes were full of tears. And he said, I've never seen anything like this. I've never felt anything like that. I've never experienced anything like this. And he said, but as long as you continue doing what you're doing, the way you're doing it, we promise you that we will always protect you, and you'll never have any problems with us. And to this day, they are the ones that we're protected from. They're that we're protected by. They're the ones that if something's happening, if there's a shootout, they will call us and tell us, don't come. There's something that's going to happen on the streets. The streets are hot. Don't come today. They protect us. They give us warnings. And they even, whenever that something's going to happen and justice has to happen in their eyes to somebody for stealing drugs or something like that, they bring them to us first for rehabilitation. And so they have come, and they come to every event, and they give us favor, and they protect us in every event. And for 2 years, we've never had a problem. We've had great favor with them, and they let us do whatever we want in their favelas because of what we do for their children and what they've seen, and they've never seen anything like that. So I think just favor, the favor that we've had, just knowing God was with us, just having that reality, just having those close calls, those moments, even that time with that shootout in that favela when we were running and different things. There was a driver that was with the other pastor, and he had to stay with the car because usually everything will get stolen off that car. But for a moment, he stepped out and got water. And when he stepped out, this tank shot right through the windshield and right through the seat of the driver's seat. And that bullet would ricochet and go into the engine, and we weren't able to get the car out. But he stepped out literally just for water. If he was there one other second, he would have been dead. But just seeing the hand of God on each of those times, seeing those close moments, and seeing that continues just to replace fear with faith. But I would say just those marker moments before Jesus came to my life, when I was yet a sinner and didn't know him, he knew me, and his hand was upon my life, and he was protecting me and making sure that I would live to walk out these days that I'm now living now, and walking of a realization of that, and a realization of my destiny and of my appointment, and a realization of now this is my second chance, in that. And I could have died, and I should have died actually, and I would have been dead before. So I think in that now, I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of death, because now if I die, it will be doing the very thing that I was born to do. It would be dying in the middle of God's perfect will, and living my best life, and living my second chance, and walking out the will of God all the days of my life. And if I've lived a very full life now, even in these, 29 short years now. I feel like I've lived 3 lives actually. And if he came back, like I just lived to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And so I've lived a full life. So I'm not afraid of death, actually. It's like, where's your sting? I'm not afraid of it. I feel like I've already died. And I don't love my life unto death to this very moment.
Lana, how many children has your team helped rescue?
Yeah. So thousands upon thousands in our prevention projects and prevented from being sold in our various ways. And then I would say hundreds upon hundreds with rescue through all these years because we didn't start rescuing till later. So it'd be hundreds upon hundreds. And now we have our rescue home in Thailand. We have 3 rescue homes in Burma for the children that would be taken to be child soldiers or sex slaves for the military junta in Burma. But now we just started the first safe home in the interior of the Amazon. We'll start 2 more before the year is over in the Amazon alone. And then we're starting more in the Northeast and in Rio de Janeiro, where the capital for child exploitation in Brazil is.
Josh, what was that movie called?
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom sparked a big conversation when it came to sex trafficking, and I think even for myself, I wondered, man, why is this something that is so not talked about? And from your perspective, I would love to just hear, why do we not even hear a lot of testimonies from people who have been rescued or who have come to know the Lord? Why is it so hard to hear about this topic?
Yeah, I think a lot of shame. I think a lot of embarrassment of what's happened when you get into trafficking. You understand their methods. They control by fear. They make them check out from their mind. It's called seasoning. They break their will. And it's kind of like an elephant. When they train an elephant, they tie it, they connect a chain to their leg, and so the baby elephant, so it won't run. And then when they get older, they'll cut the links, but they'll keep the cusp of the chain there, so the elephant still thinks that it's chained. So the elephant is powerful enough to break free from that chain, but it doesn't know because mentally it's been trained to think that it's not and that it's chained up. So I think a lot of shame, a lot of mental chains. I think a lot of fear that keeps them captive, keeps them scared that they're going to come back and find them, and all they begin to believe that once they check out, and once that's the only way that they can get them in this kind of slavery is breaking their will. So they finally break them to where they don't have the will to run, they don't have the will to fight, they don't have the will to tell their testimony. And I think the reason why you don't hear from it as much is because some people don't want to hear. They don't want to hear what's happening to children. They think it's too big, and I can't listen to that because I have children, so I can't listen to that, and the problem's too big, so I can't do anything about it, And so I think they get overwhelmed by it. They get overwhelmed by those details. They get overwhelmed by that. The shame culture gets on that it's all too much for people to take and to grasp and to really understand. But I always say this to people, and I say this because people hear that and it kind of debilitates them and it stops them, or people don't want to hear, and in all of that, and so in that, or it paralyzes them. And I say, this is nothing new. Slavery has existed for so long. It's just another form, and it has even existed in Bible days. And when you see with Moses that there was days that slavery was around him. For a long time, he was raised with slavery all around them. But one day came and he looked up and he looked out, and the penny dropped and his eyes were open to see what was around him. And he looked and he saw, and he knew he had to do something about it at that moment. Finally, at that moment, it was like he is awakened to the cause. He was awakened to the problem. There was a righteous indignation in him, like just an anger that he was moved to do something about it. And so there came a point where he was talking to God and he's like, how can I do this? How can I look at this big problem. How can I do anything? He has given all his limitations of why he couldn't do anything to the Lord. And I remember what the Lord said that I feel like is now the question of this hour to people wanting to get involved with human trafficking, with child trafficking, with the exploitation of children in our generation. And God said this question: what is in your hand, Moses? What is in your hand? Start with what is in your hand. And for Moses, it was this dirty old staff that he used to walk. It wasn't anything that was, like any gift or in this big, huge thing. It was this little thing that he used day after day that was in his hand, that's where he started in fighting slavery and freeing captives. He was the first one to show us how to do that. And I say, in this problem of human trafficking, of child trafficking, what is in your hands? It can be time. It can be influence. Whatever it be, like it could be any kind of gifting. It could be whatever kind of thing that you can use to be a voice for the voiceless, to fight for those who can't fight for themselves, to stand up and kill the Goliath in our generation of child exploitation to women and children in our generation. And so I really believe that now it's time that we've sat back long enough and we've let it paralyze us. And the Sound of Freedom movie was great. I thank God that it got it out there because it raised it again. There was one time that it came out over 20 years ago. I've been in this fight for 24 years, preventing, rescuing, and healing at-risk and exploited children with our first home with 52 kids at 24 years old. And I've seen throughout the ages people not wanting to hear. But then when the Sound of Freedom came up, it finally opened people's ears and eyes to want to hear and get involved again. It finally raised up people of an awareness of, okay, this is real. But it happened 20 years ago when 2020 actually put out a thing in Cambodia where they did a big sting and raid in Cambodia. It was on the news for a blip. And it was 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds doing boom boom and the sex tourism and trafficking from America, Australia, and basically, little girls and boys actually doing boom boom for, I think it was about $6, $7 a time every time. And people were going from all these Western nations.
What is boom boom?
Boom boom is any kind of oral sex, any kind of sexual acts, any kind of thing like that for these people. And all of a sudden it came out, and it came out around the time that my first year in Thailand of rescue, actually. And so it came out, people heard about it. For us, it made it harder to rescue because it caused it to go more underground, but it did bring awareness. But then the sad part is it quieted again. When Sound of Freedom came out, it brought awareness, and the world was ready to hear again. The world is open, I think, because of where we're at as a nation, where we're at in the world now. The world was ready to hear again. So that's my prayer, is now people look up and look out, and they look to the one right in front of them and to the world about them. And then they look in their hand and say, what do I have that I can bring to the table to fight child exploitation in my generation, in my world right now?
Lana, for that boy or girl that's watching right now that has experienced some of the things that you're mentioning and maybe have never talked about it, and to them, they may not understand how God could be in all of that or how Jesus could be there. Similar to how when you said, man, Jesus was there in your darkest time. What would you say for that person, woman, man, boy, girl, that's saying, man, I don't see how I can come out and talk about this or even surrendered my life to God if God will allow this to happen? Like, what would you say to somebody that's watching right now?
I would say I remember the freedom, the wholeness, the purity of when I did surrender it, when I came and said, here, I gave you the broken pieces. Part of my body being broken was from that, the sexual abuse that happened. Part of that opened the door for the promiscuity, for the living with your boyfriend, was from what happened to me as a child. But when I stepped foot in the doors of that church, when I encountered Jesus, And when he took away the shame, and when he took away the dirtiness, and when he took away the pain, and when he replaced it with purity, and when he replaced it with wholeness, and when he replaced it with fearness, I remember wanting that same kind of freedom for other people. I remember being scared to tell my own parents, to tell whoever. It wasn't until I was an adult, actually, that I told my dad what had happened to me. I remember my dad almost getting in an accident when we were in the car. And it wasn't until I was in my adult years that I finally told my dad what happened to me, and finally told him because I thought my dad would kill him. And he said, I'm doing everything from not going and killing him right now. And I think my dad probably would have, and he would have ended up in jail. But I remember the shame that kept me captive. I remember the embarrassment. I remember the pain that kept me captive to that. And I remember it silenced me. It silenced me from being free. It silenced me from telling anybody, never telling anybody until I was an adult. And I want to just say, there's freedom in surrender. There's freedom when you surrender that to Jesus. He can handle the dirty stuff. He can handle the painful stuff. He knows what to do with it. He knows everything. He knows what to do with that. And he's the only one that can do something with it. He's the only one. And counseling's good, but it doesn't heal that deep, deep soul wound. I know because I went through layers and layers of trauma. And I remember at 19 years old, that deep, deep soul wound that I was trying to medicate, that I was trying to just numb, that I was trying to just do whatever I could to heal myself. At that moment, at that altar, is when I was healed. And there's healing, and there's freedom, and there's forgiveness, and there's wholeness. And I've seen that. And I know I was rescued to rescue. I know I was freed to free. And now I want people to experience. That's why even what I do with these children, every time I give them their childhood back, every time we prevent them or we rescue them from that situation, it's like a piece of my childhood comes back. It's like a piece of me comes back. It's like taking back from the devil what he stole from me as a child, what he stole from me as a little girl. And a piece of me comes back when I'm able to do that for another child, when I'm able to do that for another one. I remember the first time that I shared my testimony about what had happened and about everything like this. And there was a girl, it was when I was in Bible school. And I remember being actually scared at Bible school to tell anybody because everybody were church people and I was a go-go dancer in the clubs of Hollywood. So I didn't want anybody to know the darkness that I saw, the darkness that I did, everything that I saw, everything that I partaked of. I didn't want them to see anything. And actually it was crazy, but for a moment, my mind was kind of blacked out. Like that scripture, if anyone is in Christ, they're a new creation. Old things pass away. Behold, all things become new. It was like I was a completely different person. I couldn't even remember that I did those things. Even if you told me, I wouldn't even remember. It was like I was a completely new person. I knew it. And that's when I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't stop smiling. I asked my aunt what happened to me. And she said, you met Jesus. You'll never be the same again. And I knew I met Jesus and that I'd never be the same again. And I wasn't ever since I met Jesus. And so I knew I was a different person. I knew that all those things had been taken away from me. That the shame and the pain in my past had been just taken away. I knew it and I couldn't even remember it. It was crazy. I was like living a whole nother life. But there was one time when I was at Bible school and my neighbor, she was next to me and we were kind and I knew she was a Christian and she went to church and different things. Sometimes she'd make me, if she had extra food, she'd give it to me and she knew I was a Bible school student struggling. Sometimes I'd give her extra food and we'd always look out for each other. She was a single girl living in an apartment. I was a single girl living in the apartment. So when we come home late, we'd look out for each other. And so one day I had extra spaghetti and I heard to invite her over. And so I just heard that in my heart, invite her over. So I invited her over and we're eating spaghetti and she was this good Christian girl raised in a Christian family. And all of a sudden I heard, tell her your story. And I thought, no, she can't handle it. She's a good Christian girl. I can't tell her my story. Like I can't tell her what happened to me. all of a sudden, like, I was like, okay, fine. And I did it. Like, I heard a second time. And so I did it. Now I'm bold and you hear me doing all these things with drug traffickers. But before it took like the first, second, third time. And so I told her my story and she just starts crying over her spaghetti. And I said, are you okay? It's okay. I'm okay now. Like, I'm good. I'm really good. Don't cry for me. And she said, I'm not crying for you. I'm crying for me. And she said, I've been through all of these things. What you said happened to me, and it was from my uncle, but he was a Christian, so I couldn't tell anybody because we lived in a perfect Christian family. And later I'd be promiscuous and I'd have an abortion, and I still can't tell anybody because I'm from a Christian family. And so that I've had nobody that I could talk to, and I've held this shame and this pain in for many years. And now I finally can be free of it. I finally could tell someone. I finally can get healed. And hearing your healing, it brought healing to me. It brought healing, hearing your forgiveness for all of those things. It brought forgiveness for me. And so I just want to say, like, you don't realize how much healing it is. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony of what the blood of the Lamb has done, of what the blood of Jesus has washed away, of the pain, of the shame, of the unforgiveness that he has washed away from our lives and the past that he has washed away. That's how we overcome and get victory in our life. And that's how we overcome. And so we don't realize it, but we do that for us and we get stronger and we get stronger, but then we do that for people. And every time we do that, we take back another piece that the devil has stolen from us. We take back another piece of our childhood that is stolen, that of our purity that he stole, of our innocence that he stole. We take back another piece every time we give our testimony.
Lana, who is Jesus to you?
Jesus is my everything. He's been my husband. He's been my savior. He's been my king. He's been my healer. He healed me of epilepsy. He's been my boyfriend. He's been the lover of my soul. He's been my counsel. He's been, every time I needed something, he's been the one I ran to. He's my strong arm. He's my shoulder. He's my shoulders. He's my everything.
Lana, could you pray for those who are watching and desire this relationship with Jesus Christ?
Yeah. Father God, right now, I just pray for everyone that's watching. I pray maybe this is the first time that they're hearing, or maybe they've heard all of their life. And maybe the only God or the only Jesus they know is one that's dead on the cross on that wall. And right now, through this time, through this moment, I ask you to come off that cross and into their heart and into their life. I ask you not just to be the Savior of the world and the Lord of the world, but I ask you to be their personal Savior, their personal Lord. I ask you right now that you would just demolish that separation of the sin and of the pain and of the shame that has separated you from them. And I ask that you would come close to them right now, that you would come into their life, that you would come into their heart, that you would save them, that you would heal them, that you would deliver them, that you would forgive them. That, like at that altar when I came and I said, I have nothing to give you but 1,000,000 pieces of my heart and my mind and my body. And if you can do anything with them, these 1,000,000 pieces were yours. And there was a great exchange, his life for my life for his life. I ask right now for a great exchange. Just right now, wherever they're at, in their house, in their room, in their car, wherever they're listening through their phone, for a great exchange, your life that you gave on that cross cross, your blood that was shed for the washing of their sin, of the dirtiness of the past, of every single thing. Your washing, making whole and cleaning, and your body that was broken for their healing of their heart, of their mind, of their past, of their wounds, of their trauma, the healing of whatever repercussions that have happened in their life, that right now, that Jesus comes off the cross and into their hearts and into their lives right now, that floods their heart and their mind, their room, their car, wherever they're at, the vicinity of where they're at, Lord, and they encounter you, and there is a great exchange right now. His life for your life for his life, and they encounter you, and that they're never the same from this encounter right now, that it changes the directory of their life, that their life is changed, that they can change other lives, that you rescue them so that they can go and be rescuers, Lord, that you deliver them so that they can deliver, that you heal them so that they can go out and heal as well, Lord. I thank you that who the Son sets free is free indeed. I thank you for freedom right now for the first time in their lives, or freedom for what they've been trying to get free of for many years or many months or many days. Freedom right now for every chain of bondage and captivity in their hearts and in their minds and in their souls right now, for freedom to come through the airwaves, through the TV waves, through whatever mode that they are watching us, for freedom right now. Who the Son sets free is free indeed, for a true freedom and liberation from their life right now from Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Amen.
Lana, any last words for those who are listening, watching your testimony right now?
Yeah. I would say, I believe that we are all rescued to rescue, saved to save, delivered to deliver, healed to heal, created to create. I believe every single one of us that we were created on purpose, for a purpose. And I believe that God wants to use any mess in our life and turn it into our message. He wants to use any pain in our lives and turn it into our purpose. And I believe that he can do it right here and right now. While I was praying, it reminded me of two people in the Bible. One was the woman at the well. And there was a woman at the well, and she was ashamed. And at the heat of the day, she went to go draw water because she didn't want to face her accuser. She didn't want to face people that knew her history, that knew everything about her. And what happened was, when she went to that well, Jesus knew exactly where she was at, exactly where she was going to be at the hottest point of the day. And he went out of his way to meet her and find her. And I believe that Jesus has gone out of his way during this time, during this podcast, to get this testimony into your hands, to come to you and say he knows exactly where you're at right now. And when he met her at exactly where she was at, she encountered him. He said he read her mail, told her everything that she was going through, everything that she had done. She was living with multiple men, and the man that she was living with right then wasn't her husband. And when that happened, she said, I know there's something about you. I know you're different. And he told her, if you ask of me to drink, I'll give you water that you'll never thirst and you'll never search again at that moment. And she encountered him, and after she encountered him, she went and she told all these people about a man that told her everything that she had ever done. And at that moment, from that, Jesus changed her life to go and change her world. She went, and all those people that she was ashamed to see, that she was ashamed to face, that she was ashamed to look at, God changed her life to change her world. And I believe that he's doing that. There was another crazy man in the tombs, and he was tormented in his mind. He was naked, and he cried out, and nobody could help him, and nobody can bind him. And he cut himself, and he screamed out day and night and cried out day and night. But when he encountered Jesus, the Bible says that he was in his right mind and clothed, and he wanted to follow Jesus. And Jesus said, no, go back and tell your friends and family what great things I have done for you. And it says that he went back to his region, and everybody was in awe of the change that had happened from this madman that was now clothed and in his right mind. And so I say that right now, Jesus wants to change your life so then you can go and change your world. So let him encounter you through this time. And then from that, let your life be changed so that you can go out and change your world.
Hey everybody, this is Joshua Gayle, lead video editor for Delafé Testimonies. Our mission with Delafé Testimonies is to create the world's largest archive of Jesus' testimonies until his return. We appreciate each and every one of you who gives to make these videos possible. If you would like to support and learn more about our ministry, please visit our website at missiondelafé.org.